They say that if you fall asleep in Hollows Cemetery, you won't wake up where you lay down. You'll wake up buried. Not figuratively, not metaphorically, literally 6 feet under, with nothing but soil in your throat and the cold kiss of earth against your eyelids. It was one of those stories that gets passed around small towns like ghost stories at summer camps, whispered and exaggerated with every telling. I'd heard it growing up, but never paid it any real mind. Just another slice of local folklore, recycled for Halloween hayrides and small-town weirdos desperate for a little excitement. Still, the story stuck with me. Not because I believed it, but because everyone else seemed to. I mean, it had all the ingredients of a good legend. Old graves, missing persons, half-buried newspaper clippings, and a whole lot of hearsay. And now that I had a small but steadily growing audience for my horror vlog, it felt like the perfect opportunity to lean into the macabre. Real or not, the cemetery had a reputation, and I could use that. So I did what any content-hungry idiot would do. I packed a sleeping bag, a thermos of coffee, a GoPro, my phone, and a portable ring light, and I announced to the world that I was going to do it. Spend the night in Hollows Cemetery. On a live stream. No jump cuts, no edits. Just me, the gravestones, and whatever the hell decided to crawl up from underneath them. The entrance to the cemetery was older than I remembered. The iron gate was slightly ajar, rusted hinges groaning like they hadn't been disturbed in years. My boots crunched down on a path of brittle leaves as I stepped inside. The night was clear, full moon overhead, casting a sterile glow across rows of tilted tombstones and weather-worn angels. There was a stillness to the place, the kind that felt too perfect, like nature itself was holding its breath. The chat was already blowing up by the time I reached the center of the grounds. People were egging me on, cracking jokes, dropping ghost emojis like confetti. I leaned into the vibe, throwing out spooky commentary in my best faux serious narrator voice. The engagement was great, viewership climbing minute by minute. The plan was working. I picked a spot between 2 trees, not far from a stone bench and a grave that had long lost its name to erosion. It was secluded enough for drama, but not so far from the main path that I'd get completely turned around in the dark. I panned the camera slowly across the graves, letting the viewers soak in the atmosphere. Then I saw it, just off to the right. Nestled beside a broken headstone was a mound of disturbed dirt. Not recent, but definitely not ancient either. I walked over, aiming the light down. The ground had clearly been dug up and roughly pushed back. Weeds hadn't had time to retake it. At first, I thought it was just an animal's handiwork. A raccoon maybe, or someone's dog going rogue. But then I spotted something poking from the soil. At first glance, it looked like a stick. A brittle, pale thing, crooked and dry. I crouched down, swept some dirt away with my glove, and paused. It wasn't a stick. It was a bone. Small, but not small enough to be from a squirrel. Narrow, clean, the kind of clean that doesn't happen naturally. I felt my stomach tighten as I nudged another chunk of dirt aside and found another one, curved and delicate. The chat was going nuts, half screaming for me to leave, half spamming skull emojis, and daring me to keep digging. Then someone posted a side-by-side comparison from a Google search. Radius. Human. I stared at the screen for a long moment. The rational part of me insisted it had to be a prank. Some kid probably raided a Halloween store or had a dark sense of humor and too much time on their hands. Maybe someone buried fake bones years ago, and time had simply unearthed them. The logical explanations were endless. That's what I told myself. I laughed for the stream, made a show of brushing the dirt off my gloves like it was no big deal. But I didn't touch the bones again. I didn't say it out loud, but something about them felt wrong. Too dry, too clean, like they didn't belong here, and yet belonged more than anything else ever had. Still, the show had to go on. I cracked a joke for the audience, gave a half-hearted ghost story about being welcome to the cemetery, then set up my sleeping bag in the same spot. The ring light cast a wide, sterile glow over my little camp while the rest of the cemetery receded into deep shadows. I checked my phone, battery fine, stream stable, chat still lively. I did a final pan around the area, letting the camera take in the gravestones one last time. Most were quiet and unremarkable, but there was one, just barely visible at the edge of the light, that I hadn't noticed before. Cracked down the middle, tilted like it had been dropped into the ground, not placed. No name, no date, just the faint outline of something scratched into the stone. My camera couldn't pick it up. I told myself I'd check it out in the morning. I slid into the sleeping bag, zipped it up halfway, and gave my followers one last smirk and a wave. The breeze picked up slightly, rustling the leaves just enough to make the shadows dance. "Good night," I said, though I didn't really feel sleepy yet. Then the screen went black, and I closed my eyes. I didn't feel alone. Not really. At first, there was nothing. No light, no sound, just the weight, crushing, oppressive absolute. A pressure that wasn't pain so much as permanence. Something final. The kind of stillness that didn't belong to the world above. The instinct to breathe kicked in before awareness had fully returned. Reflex. Automatic. The moment my chest heaved, soil spilled into my mouth like the ground itself was trying to silence me. Dry, powdery dirt clung to my tongue and scraped down my throat. I gagged, coughed, but no air came. My limbs flailed, or tried to. Movement was a memory. My hands were pinned, my legs heavy, as if the entire earth had decided to claim me. It wasn't a nightmare. I was buried. The thought didn't fully form at first. It drifted, slow and surreal, between moments of confusion and sheer animal panic. My brain refused to process it. It kept searching for another explanation. Sleep paralysis. A prank gone wrong. Some kind of hallucination. But the more I tried to move, the clearer it became. There was no sleeping bag anymore. No sky. Just packed soil above, behind, below. It pressed in on every angle. It filled my nose, my ears, my throat. My chest convulsed again, this time with less desperation and more realization. There was no oxygen. Just damp rot and dust. Every breath brought less and less. The corners of my vision, though there was no light to see, began to curl inward. I screamed, or tried to. The sound didn't go far. It echoed within my skull, bouncing off the inside of my mouth, swallowed whole by the dirt. It didn't feel like screaming. It felt like drowning in sand. In those first moments, I was sure I'd die. Right then, right there. That this was the story's end. Some stupid viral stunt gone sideways. One final shot for the live stream. A joke turned obituary. But then I heard it. Scratching. Not close at first. Just faint. A brittle rhythm above me. Filtered through layers of compacted soil. Soft and scraping like fingernails on wood, except slower. Less deliberate. It was a sound that made no sense because the logic part of my mind, the part not entirely buried yet, whispered that no one would know to look for me. Not this soon. Not in this place. Still, the sound grew clearer. Something was digging. Hope flared, sharp and blinding, like a match struck in a pitch-black room. I strained my ears, heart thudding like a snare drum in my ribs. The scratches became more erratic, closer now, like claws instead of fingers. Dirt began to loosen around my face. Something was up there. Something was trying to reach me. I held still. I didn't scream again. I couldn't. My throat was raw. My mind tried to believe it was help. Maybe someone saw the stream, came looking, found the cemetery. Maybe the story was already going viral, cops digging me out. But the scratching didn't sound like shovels. It sounded like gnawing. My pulse thundered. The scratching was faster now. Hungrier. The way it stopped and started, paused, and then resumed like something was tasting the earth between swipes. Like it wasn't just removing the dirt, it was savoring it. Then the soil above my face cracked. Light didn't pour in, only colder air. Then a smell. Not fresh, not like open air. Stale, wet animal. Breath that had no place in lungs. The dirt shifted, fell inward, and I braced for collapse. But instead of weight, there was space. Something had broken through. Then a sound. Wet. Slithering. And something touched my face. A tongue. It ran across my cheeks slowly, like it was claiming me. The texture was leathery, too long, impossibly warm. It lingered just beneath my eye, then flicked away, and in the stillness that followed, a voice rasped against my skin. Hoarse. Too close. Like it spoke through a mouth pressed against my bones. Your turn next. That was all it said. Then fingers, no, not fingers, something more spindled, wrapped around my wrists, slick and cold, and pulled. The earth gave way. I didn't help. I couldn't. My limbs were limp, heart stuttering, in confusion. My body slid up through the soil like a corpse rising for air. Dirt sloughed off my clothes, clogged my ears, curled beneath my fingernails. I couldn't see what was lifting me, couldn't move my head, couldn't even scream again. Then I was on the surface. Just like that. On my back. Gasping. The cemetery air was frigid. The kind of cold that cuts clean and immediate. I choked on the sky. Every breath a miracle laced with pain. My hands twitched in the moonlight, filthy and shaking. My body was whole. Bruised maybe, but whole. Above me, the trees swayed gently, as if nothing had happened. The ring light was gone. So was the sleeping bag. My gear. My camera. But I was out. I rolled to my side and coughed, spewing black soil and bile onto the roots of an ancient oak. My chest burned with life. Then I remembered the thing. The tongue. The voice. I jerked upward, searching. The clearing was empty. No footprints. No claw marks. Just a faint impression of where I had laid my gear. In a shallow hole, rapidly filling with fallen leaves and dust. Who, or what, had pulled me out wasn't there anymore. But something had been, and it had left me with a promise. Home should have felt like a return to safety, but it didn't. It felt like dragging dirt across clean floors. Like something clinging to me long after it should have let go. The mirror was the first problem. Not what it reflected, but what it failed to erase. I'd scrubbed myself raw in the shower, watched the brown water spiral down the drain until it ran clear. But when I lifted my hands, nails still lined with soil, skin beneath them red and ragged. It was like I hadn't touched water at all. Like the dirt wasn't just on me, but in me. My fingernails looked longer, sharper, not broken, but changed. Sleep didn't come easy, and when it did, it came wrong. Every night was the same. The sensation of weight, of soil pressing against my chest. Dream after dream, I clawed toward light that didn't exist. Woke, gasping, hands clenched in fists so tight they left crescents in my palms. Some mornings, I'd find grit in my sheets, fine, black earth that hadn't been there before. My floor was clean, my laundry washed, but every time I stripped the bed, there it was again. A dusting of something old and rotten. Then came the scratches. Thin, parallel lines running down my calves and across the backs of my thighs. Not deep, but deliberate. They didn't scab the way normal scratches do. They stayed red and raw, as if fresh, even days later. I kept checking my apartment. Bed frame, corners, sharp edges. Nothing matched. My cat had passed away years ago. There was nothing in my apartment that should have left those marks. I started wearing long sleeves and jeans in the house, just in case something watched me through the windows. The worst part was how normal everything pretended to be. The world didn't care that I had died and come back, or at least something like it. People at the grocery store smiled, completely unaware that I couldn't stop picturing my lungs filled with dirt. My boss called about missed work. Friends left texts I couldn't bring myself to answer. I told myself I was recovering. I told myself I was tired. But it wasn't tiredness. It was unraveling. I went back to Hollow's cemetery the next afternoon. Daylight felt like armor, though it didn't make much of a difference once I crossed the threshold. The place was quieter than I remembered. Not peaceful, but hollow. No wind. No birds. The trees stood still, like they'd been painted on. I brought my camera this time, out of habit more than anything. There wasn't any stream to record. Just me, retracing steps I no longer remembered taking. The grave was still there, the one where I'd camped. But now, something had changed. There was a new name carved into the headstone. Mine. Not just my first name, but all of it. Full. Exact. The letters were rough, gouged in jagged lines like they'd been carved with a nail or a key. Nodates Noipitap. Just my name. I touched it, half expecting the stone to be warm. It wasn't. The dirt in front of the grave was undisturbed now. No signs of the hole I'd clawed out from. No sign of the thing that had pulled me up. Just grass and stone and silence. I left without recording a thing. That night, I did something I hadn't dared to yet. I watched the stream. The file was corrupted at first. Some glitch in the transfer, I assumed, but after a few restarts and some coaxing, it played. At least the beginning did. the setup, the jokes, the chat reacting in real time. The moment I found the bones, I watched myself laugh, saw the doubt behind my eyes that I hadn't noticed in the moment. Then came a moment I laid down. The camera panned upward, catching the outline of trees, the glow of the moon. Then static, just a flicker, not long, a single skipped frame. And in that frame, between two tree trunks, something moved. At first, I thought it was a shadow, but it didn't sway with the wind. It didn't follow the rhythm of the camera. It crouched, low, slouched, arms long enough to reach the ground, even while hunched. No visible face, just an indentation where a head should have been, cocked unnaturally to one side. I scrubbed back and forth in the timeline. The figure didn't move when I looked, only when I wasn't paying attention. During another flicker, closer this time, it stood beside the sleeping bag, towering, leaning, waiting. It hadn't pulled me under. It had watched while something else did. And when I stopped moving, when sleep fully claimed me, it tilted its head and took a step forward. One step, no more. That's where the stream ended. The screen cut to black. My chest tightened as I stared at the frozen final frame. The thing had no eyes, but it was looking at me. I closed the file, shut the laptop, and paced the room for hours. I didn't sleep. Couldn't. The next morning, a letter arrived. Not a bill. Not junk. Real paper. Stiff and yellowed. A return address I didn't recognize. No state. No zip. The postmark was older than I was. Faded. Dated from a decade that didn't make sense. The ink on the envelope was smeared, but readable. My name. Again. Written in my own handwriting. Inside, a single sheet of paper. Folded once. No decoration. No signature. Just a sentence. I warned you not to sleep. I dropped the letter and backed away from it like it might crawl. My hand was shaking again. My skin itched along the scratches that still hadn't healed. The corners of the room seemed darker than they had 5 minutes ago. My reflection in the TV screen looked wrong, tilted, stretched, like it had moved half a second slower than me. I didn't remember writing the letter, but I believed it. The dreams stopped being dreams and started feeling like instructions. They came in flashes. Fingers scratching against softwood. A lantern swinging from a nail. A woman weeping through sewn lips. Over and over, the images played like film caught in a reel loop, stuttering and skipping, until the only thing left was the sound of breath. Someone else's rasping just beside my ear. I stopped trying to explain it. The dirt under my nails never left. I'd wash until my skin went raw and still wake up with soil pressed deep into the creases of my knuckles. I stopped sleeping altogether for a while. At least I thought I had. But I'd blink and it would be morning again. Time kept slipping sideways. Desperation does weird things to people. It sends them spiraling into libraries they haven't stepped foot in since high school. It turns them toward records no one else cares to read. It leads them to people like Mrs. Halpern, the local historian who never quite left the last century. Her office smelled like vinegar and old leather. I found her through a forum that hadn't been updated since 2009, a thread titled Buried Awake, Hollow's cemetery lore and other folklore from Westbriar. She didn't ask questions. She didn't seem surprised when I showed her the headstone with my name on it. She barely blinked at the story, though her hands trembled slightly as she unfolded a map older than the town itself. That's when she showed me the article. It was printed in a typeface so delicate, it looked like it would vanish with a single breath. The clipping dated back to the late 1800s. No byline, just a headline that read, "The Taker of Turns." The photo was grainy, almost blank, save for the outline of a man standing knee-deep in a grave, mouth open mid-scream. The story described a ritual buried by time and silence. A trial of sorts carried out during the full moon. It didn't say why, just that once every generation, someone would volunteer or be chosen to spend the night in the cemetery. If they survived, they emerged changed, not just in body, in purpose. Those who came back weren't celebrated. They were cursed. The town called them keepers. Not allowed, only in records, whispered between pages and receipts for funeral lilies. The role wasn't spiritual. It wasn't sacred. It was maintenance, obligation, debt paid in soil. The keeper's job was simple. Before the next full moon, they had to return the favor. Find someone to take their place. Bury them in Hollows Cemetery and walk away. No gravesite, no gravestone. Just dirt. A transfer. A trade. Those who failed to do suffered a different fate. Their skin began to harden. Joints locked. They became husks, shells full of earth. Every decade or so, one was found, curled beneath the roots of a tree, mouth still full of black mud. They weren't buried. They had become part of the cemetery. I remember the feeling then, like the floor had tilted and gravity was trying to shrug me off the earth. My mouth had gone dry, but not from fear, from recognition. It was like I already knew, like I'd always known. Mrs. Halpern said the taker of turns wasn't a person. Not exactly. It wasn't even a name, not really. It was a title, something passed down, worn like skin. The first keeper had spoken to it, pleaded with it, tried to break the cycle. But it wasn't listening. It never had been, because it wasn't the creature. It was the one who walked away. It was me. The thing that dug me out hadn't been a rescuer. It had been a handoff, a passing of the shovel, an unspoken welcome. The more I thought about it, the more pieces began clicking into place. The letters in my own handwriting, the shadow in the video, the dreams that weren't dreams, showing me how it was done, where to dig, how deep, what to whisper to the earth when I was done. I wasn't the haunted. I was the haunter, and I was running out of time. The moon was almost full. The calendar offered no comfort. Just a date, circled in red. Next turn. I didn't know who to choose. I didn't want to know, but I also didn't want to become one of them. One of the husks swallowed into the roots like fertilizer. My body had already started rebelling. My hands had gone stiff in the mornings, joints aching with every twitch. My skin peeled in sheets, revealing something darker beneath. I stopped leaving the apartment, closed the blinds, turned off my phone. If I didn't go out, I couldn't choose anyone. Couldn't be tempted. But even isolation didn't stop the pull. The city whispered beneath my floorboards. I felt the heartbeat of the cemetery in my radiator. No matter how loud I turned the TV, I could still hear the scratching. And not from above, from below. I told myself I'd never do it, that I could fight it, that the curse was just a story. But every night, the dreams returned. Only they didn't feel like dreams anymore. Then came the last night. I don't remember falling asleep. I don't remember putting on shoes. But I woke up outside, not on my bed, not even inside the apartment. On the sidewalk, barefoot, caked in mud. The sky was pale, just before sunrise. My body trembled with cold and something else I couldn't name. In my hands was a shovel. Old, rusted, the handle worn smooth from use. The wood warm in my grip. And carved into the blade, barely visible but unmistakable, was my name. Not printed, not written, scratched in. It started with the cracks. Tiny lines in the skin around my knuckles, webbing outward like the shell of something waiting to break. I wrapped them in gauze, but every time I peeled it back, more cracks had formed. Not wounds, not blisters, just fissures like my body was drying from the inside out. Then came the breathlessness, not just from exertion, from standing, from thinking. Each inhale caught on something low in my chest, as if my lungs were filling with dust. There was a smell I couldn't scrub away, soil, wet and rotten, like the underside of a grave that had been opened too soon. I changed clothes, washed everything. Still, it lingered. I stopped checking the mirror. The worst part wasn't the decay. It was the thoughts that weren't mine. They whispered while I slept, when I thought I was sleeping. A sound like wind through grass, like roots twisting underground. I started hearing things in the pipes, in the sink drain, in the quiet between commercials. Murmurs in a language I didn't recognize, but somehow understood. They told me where the soft ground was. I began keeping notes. Not consciously. I'd find pages on my desk, coffee-stained and scribbled with coordinates, names of parks, public trails, words like loam, clay, shallow water table. Circles on a map, all within an hour's drive. All places I'd been, long ago or maybe just in dreams. I burned the maps, tore the notes into pieces so small they couldn't be taped back together. They returned, not the exact ones, new ones, more precise, etched onto the insides of cardboard boxes, drawn in soap on my bathroom mirror. Once I woke up with a pimper tattoo on my forearm, a set of GPS numbers so faint they looked like freckles. The shovel never left my side. I tried discarding it, left it on a bus once, but it was leaning against my door by the time I got home. The blade still bore my name, but new words had joined it now. Scratches in the rust. They changed every day. Next, take, beneath. Every footstep felt heavier, like I was walking on thin glass, and something below waited to catch me if I fell through. I paced the apartment for hours, tapping each tile with my toes before stepping, just in case. I stopped going outside, but that didn't stop them from coming in. The voices came clearer now. Not like before. No longer distant, no longer gentle. They shouted through the heater vents, hissed behind the walls. A choir of buried things, begging in 1,000 dialects. Some screamed, some sang lullabies. One laughed, always at the same hour, 2:16 a.m. I covered the drains, blocked the vents, placed salt lines on every windowsill. None of it mattered, because the pull was stronger than protection. When the moon began to swell again, I knew I didn't have long. I told myself I could still choose not to. I could break the pattern, let the earth take me instead. Better a husk than a murderer. But when the time came, I didn't choose. I moved. Feet carried me before I agreed. Hands gripped the shovel. I didn't pack a bag. I didn't need to. The body knew the way. Hollow's cemetery was quiet when I arrived. Too quiet. The air was thick with the promise of rain that wouldn't come. Then I saw them. Another one, just like me weeks ago. A tripod, a ring light, a nervous smile pasted onto a too-wide face. Talking into a phone screen with forced excitement and barely hidden fear. They hadn't seen me yet. I stepped forward, unsure why, unsure what I would say. Warn them? Beg them to leave? I thought that's what I wanted. But the moment they looked at me, something inside twisted. Not pain, not sickness, hunger. I opened my mouth. Nothing came out, only dirt. They waved. Nervous laugh. Probably thought I was just another local weirdo. Maybe they'd asked to collab. Maybe they'd tell their followers about the creepy guy lurking in the trees. I lifted the shovel. My hands trembled. Not from fear, from restraint. I dug. Each scoop felt heavier than the last. Not because the earth resisted, but because my mind did. Somewhere deep inside, the last part of me was screaming. But the sound was muffled now, like a radio buried under a mattress. I couldn't stop. I didn't ask for their name. I didn't want it. They were talking the whole time. Maybe joking. Maybe asking what I was doing. Maybe begging. I don't remember. The only clear thought I had was how soft the ground was. The last thing I remember is their face, twisted in a mixture of confusion and dawning horror. Not when they saw the hole. When they saw what was in it. Not empty. Prepared. I don't remember finishing the job. But the footage shows the end. The final scene is shaky, recorded on a phone that was either dropped or placed deliberately. The camera shows my face, filthy, wide-eyed, lips trembling like they've forgotten how to form words. My fingernails are caked black. My breath rasps, shallow and uneven. I whisper into the lens with a voice I barely recognize. I didn't mean to. I was just trying to stay awake. The screen flickers. A new voice follows. Dry. Hoarse. Familiar. Your turn next.